Hello, welcome back. This is Jeff Byers, and I'm your instructor for ANI 150. And we are going to continue with getting around in Maya and learning the Maya UI. After watching those videos, the earlier videos, intro videos, I'm not going to go over how to move around because you should have that kind of down by now. If not, please watch those videos again until you feel comfortable moving around in Maya. All right, so basically, the biggest thing is learning how to navigate Maya. So over here, you guys all know that we've got the selection node. We have the marquee menu that we can mark, lasso tool, or we can paint selection tool. We've got the move tool, rotate tool, and the scale tool. Also on the left hand side, we've also got the view panels. So let's say if I hit the space bar, that's how we get from the perspective, okay? But to be honest with you, most of the modeling that I do will be in the orthographic views. So we have the top view looking down, front view, and the side view. So these viewports are available to be able to place objects on top of each other. So the whole idea about creating the castle is for you to understand 3D space, okay? 3D axes. A lot of times we've been drawing most of our lives, and that's what we like to do. It's instant gratification, but with Maya there's 3 dimensions, so we have to work a little harder to get the objects placed where we want them. Okay, so I go from each view, okay, while I'm modeling. Okay, all right, so that's the first thing you need to really understand, the 3D space. And while I'm rotating around here in perspective, you can see that down in the corner here we have an axis. Okay, the axes for Maya is Y is up, Z is forward, and X is side to side. Okay, so Y is up, Z is forward, and X is from side to side. And what I usually tell students is that you can rotate down and around, and the idea is when you start modeling, you should probably have your perspective facing the Z. So if you see, this is the Z axis here, and you can tell by when you look at the axis rotational pivot, you can see that I'm moving it around. Okay, all right. So to better understand that, I'm going to click on a primitive. So I'm going to click on poly modeling. You could be on something else. If you don't see the shelf, then you're going to need to go ahead and follow my tutorial, my earlier tutorial on how to reset Maya. Okay, so if you see things missing, you may want to reset Maya, delete the preferences. I go through a tutorial in my earlier video, so please watch that. Right now I'm just going to click on a cube. Okay, I'm going to rotate around, and you can see now in perspective. So when I zoom in or hit the F key, which just kind of frames that cube, the F key frames the cube. Remember we talked about learning your hotkeys? Okay. So that's one hotkey that you're going to be using a lot. So the F key frames your object. Now if you have one or more objects, so I'm going to do Control D, which is duplicate, and hit the W key and move that over. If I select both of those and hit the A key, it will frame both objects that are selected. Okay? Or it will frame, even if you don't have anything selected, it will frame those 2 objects. Okay? It'll frame whatever is in your scene, so which is going to be nice when you're building the castle because it's a big object when you get it all finished. Okay, so those are the keys. If you don't like your what you've done, then you can go Control Z, which will delete, or go back will undo basically, and Shift Z will redo. So Shift Z will redo, so if I go Shift Z, it'll bring everything back again. Okay, if you just want to delete objects, you don't like them there anymore, you can marquee select them or select them one at a time. If I have more than one object that I want to delete, I just marquee select. So basically I'm holding down the left mouse button and dragging it over the objects and hitting delete. Okay, so understanding how to go, hitting the space bar, and if you hover over with your mouse cursor, it will go to that viewport, okay, which is the orthographic top view. And in this case, I'm hovering over the front view. You can see my mouse circling. I'm going to hit the space bar, and you can see how I can do that. Go from one viewport to the next. Okay. The next thing we're going to do, if you don't have a dual monitor and you want to have your reference in your into your perspective, and I would highly recommend against that, I usually place the reference in the front view. So if we were modeling a cup or something like that, I'd want to have that in the front view because that's facing the Z, as you can see. Okay. So to do that, you have to make sure that your images are in your Maya projects and in your module folder, the one that we created in the earlier video. Okay, so I've got two of these castles, Castle 2 and Castle 3. I'm going to be using Castle 3. Make sure they're in the source images folder of your project. Okay, so you got your projects, okay, documents, Maya projects. You can see we've got the Maya projects, and this is the folder you created, and source images. So all your images go into source images folder. Okay, all right. So go back to my Maya. Here we go. And we're in the front view, so you just have to hit the space bar until you get to the front view. Now let's say you mess up your perspective viewports where you have your perspective and top view and all that gets mixed up, or you have two top views, or you get two front views, or you don't know what you did. Then just click on this guy right here. This guy right here on the left hand side, the panel layout will remember or set it back up again for you if you get it messed up. So if you get everything messed up, you can set it this way. Now if that still doesn't work, then what you want to do is you want to go and do that tutorial where I show you how to reset the preferences, where you close Maya, reset the preferences, and open Maya back up again, and it will give you a fresh new Maya. Okay, like you would just open it up for the first time. Okay, so just remember that's kind of a save all. Just make sure that if you're modeling and you model a bunch of stuff, you want to save your project. So file, save scene as, and you want to save it in increments. So let's say you're working on your castle, you save it in increments. So castle 01 underscore 01, castle 2, castle 3, castle 4. Because as you're working, if Maya were to crash, then you could open up an earlier save. Okay, and that way you don't waste 2, 3, 4 hours or whatever amount of time that you spent on it. So just remember that. Save scene as. I usually don't do increment and save. I've had students have problems with that, where if Maya does crash, then it will just blow everything out, that you just lost everything. So save it manually yourself. Okay. If you use incremental save, you could find yourself with nothing at all. There are instances where students have said that they've been saving, and then they go back and find out that it was not saving, and it just saved your text that you typed in there. So I don't really trust that increment and save. So just save scene as. It's a little more work, but then you know your work has been saved properly. Okay. With that said, then let's get started. So I'm going to go ahead and go to View, into the front viewport, and go to Image Plane and Import Image. Okay. All right, so I need to make sure my images aren't showing up here, so I got to make sure I set it to the right one. So go File, Set Project. I'm going to scroll down to J Byers. If I can find it. J Byers this one right here, and set. And then I can go to File, okay, I go to View, and go to Image again, and there they are. So I'm going to click on this guy right here. Okay, you can choose either one or the other one. I'm only going to show you certain things, and then I'll let you go from there, meaning that once I show you how to do the basic shapes, then I'm going to have you guys go on your own and do your own thing. Once you get started, it'll be easy. You're just practicing how to move things around and build. Okay, so that's the whole basis for this. And since this is a short week, I figured that would be the best way to go. So what you do is once you get that in, you just hit the space bar and get into perspective view and move this out of the way. So I'm going to click on the blue arrow, move it back. And that way I have plenty of space to work on the castle. And I just need this in my viewport, and it's kind of nice to have. You can just look at it, and I don't really like how it's squared off, so I'm going to make all those spires, if you want to call that. Those are all going to be round to keep it simple. Okay, all right. So that's about basically it for getting your scene set up with your reference. And then you want to select it by marquee selecting it or clicking on it. Now if you don't see it and you can't click on it, then you can find it right here. It's called Image Plane 1. You can delete it. You can select it this way. This is called the outliner. Basically it shows everything in your scene, lays it all out for you. That's why they call it the outliner. And if you don't see that, you can go to Windows and then Outliner. There we go. Okay, so now we want to click on and put this in a layer. So you select this and you should see your channel editor. If you don't, do Control A. That goes between the attribute editor, okay, that's the attributes of this object, to the channel box, which is Control A again, and that gives you the channel box. So if you go Control A, it goes back and forth, it switches between the attribute editor, then Control A again goes to the channel editor. And the channel editor gives you the translates, rotate, scale, and visibility. Okay, and this particular under shapes, the image plane itself tells you what the depth and the size is. Okay, now I'm just not going to go too deep into this. These are just the attributes for this object. So what I want to do is I want to go down to the layers. Okay, under layers, okay, if you select your object, you can click on this one at the very end. Okay, this one will create a new layer and assign selected objects. When I click on that, it creates a new layer and assigns that object to that layer. I can turn it off and on. Okay, I can reference it, that's template, and then hit it again, it's reference. So if I click on this, it goes between nothing, templated, and then click on it again, reference. Now the reason why I want reference, because I can't select it, and when I'm trying to model, I don't want to keep clicking on this accidentally, and I don't think you want to either, because it's really pain. It's a real pain. So that's how you set it up. You can always turn that off when you are rendering, or when you're finished with your modeling and all that stuff. You can just turn it off. Okay, but it's nice to have it there as a reference. All right. Okay, so the first thing you want to do, and usually when I'm modeling, unless I need the grid on, I usually like to turn it off. So that's under, if you want to turn that off, you can go to Show, into the modeling viewport, and go to Turn Grid Off. Okay? Okay, so now we've got this all set up, and now we just need to go ahead and save what we have so far. So go to File, Save Scene As, and like I said, we want to make sure that we're saving it to the right project, and just go ahead and go in here and name it like your first initial last name underscore. I always put your name on it, because when I'm grading it, it's on your MB file when you save it. So we're actually saving it as a Maya binary. I'll talk about that. That's just basically the file format for Maya, and it'll say, when you look at it, it'll have like a .mb on it. So that's the file format. That's the native format for Maya. Okay, and then underneath of it, there's another file format. It's called Maya ASCII. Okay, and Maya ASCII, I usually don't use that unless I want to make sure that my files will go from a later version back to an earlier version. Usually you can't do that. Maya doesn't allow you to go backwards. It's not really backwards compatible with other versions. Like 2020, I would have to save it as an ASCII file to get it to open it up in 2020. And some things don't just go over. Stuff like rigging and stuff like that will not work. So ASCII for modeling is a really good one to use if you want to go backwards in compatibility between Maya 2023 and Maya 2020. I really don't do that much, but I use basically binary. So just make sure it's MB, which is Maya binary. And I'm just going to say castle, right? Start. Let's say something like that. Here we go. Castle start. And then save it. Save as. And then next time you save it, you'll save it, I just go back in here and I want to save it again. Let's say I did some work, and I can it just starts like that, and I just click on the end of start, the T if I can, there we go, and do _01. And that way you can't have spaces, so I always do an underscore between words. But that's how I save, and then I just save it as 1, 2, 3, 4, and I may have 100 saves or 200 saves. It doesn't matter, because I can go back anytime I need to in case my scene gets corrupted, which happens a lot anyway. So make sure you save a lot.